Hi everyone, welcome to another Procreate tutorial. This is the animation that we will be making in today's video. If you are new here, I mainly post Procreate tutorials, so if that is something you're interested in, go ahead and subscribe. Otherwise, before we get started, the only thing that you will need to do is download the color palette and the font. I have them linked in the description below. They're totally free to download. For the color palette, just double tap it and it'll open it up right into Procreate so that you can use the same colors as you follow along with the video today. For the font, you can either add a text layer on a canvas and then go to your font library and click Import Font. Or when the font downloads, you can select that file and click Open with Procreate. Either way, you'll get the font into Procreate to use. This drawing/animation would also be great to use if you want to do a different word or a different color palette. It'll work the same exact way. So if you want to change it up and do something different, go ahead and just follow along the same way that I am doing, but use your own word and colors, and you will get the same result. So take a second to go and get that all ready, and then come back and we will get started. Okay, first things first, we will go over our canvas dimensions. They are 10 inches by 10 inches at 300 dpi, or 3000 by 3000 pixels. The color profile that I'm on is the second one on the RGB list. And for our layers today, by the end of the video, we'll sync a lot of our layers together as we go, but we do need a good amount to work with, so make sure you have at least 15 layers available here. If you do not, you can always lower your DPI here to get more layers. This is the color palette that we will be working with today, unless you're using your own colors, but for me, obviously I am going to be using the rainbow. But we are going to grab the second color on the top row, this black color, so that we can add our text and it shows up black. On our white background, our background is going to stay white. So let's go ahead and add our text. Click the gear icon, click add text. I'm just going to double tap to highlight it, click the keyboard option to bring up my big keyboard, hit caps lock and type the word pride, or whatever word you want to use. I'll double tap it again and click this font area in the top left to bring up the font menu. And I'm going to select the font that you should have downloaded if you want to use the same one. The Lemon Drop font, it is one of my favorites. And then I'm just going to zoom out and make this bigger and increase my size and my tracking a little bit. So I have my text at about 175 and my tracking at 6%. Then I'm going to hit done. I'm going to grab my arrow tool. I'm going to make sure uniform, it is set to uniform with snapping turned on in the bottom left. And I am just going to drag it to the very center of my screen where I see both yellow lines pop up. Okay, now on our layer menu, the text was added on its own separate layer, so I'm going to grab this layer 1 and drag it above my text. This is where we will draw out our colors to start off, and in order to lay them out correctly and assist us as we move them around for our animation, we are going to set up the grid feature. So under the gear icon, under canvas, click to turn on the drawing guide and then click edit drawing guide. And we do want this 2D grid option turned on. But the biggest thing here is we are going to increase our grid size until we have the same number of squares across as we have colors. So if you're using the same colors as me, I have 6. If you're using a different set of colors, go ahead and count those up and make sure that you have the same number going across. So right here at 500 pixels for my grid size, I have 6 squares across. If you have an even number, you shouldn't have to move your grid at all. But if you have an odd number, like 5, you will have to move this center line to the left or right a little bit so that we can get the squares evenly across the screen. Just get it about as close as you can, but I'm going to move mine back Once you have that all ready to go ahead and just click done. And now we have our grid laid out over our picture. So on this layer 1 here, we are going to grab the first color on the second row, the first of our regular colors. Click the selection tool, set it to a rectangle with color fill turned on. And I'm just going to start on the top left side outside of my screen and draw a rectangle to cover this first square. So right where this grid line is where I will stop, but cover the entire rest of the square. Click the selection tool to turn it off. Grab the second color on the second row and do the same thing. This time we'll start right where the colors will meet and then drag it and cover the next and cover until we hit the next line. Let it go. Click the selection tool to turn it off. As you can see here, they overlap just a teeny bit and my orange bled into where my red was. That's okay. We would rather have them overlap a little bit than have a gap. We don't want any gaps. So make sure that they are at least touching. If they overlap a teeny bit, that's totally fine. Let's grab our third color on the second row and do the next square. And always turn off your selection tool first. If you just jump to your color palette and grab the next color with your selection still active, it will change the color of your last selection. So always click it again to turn it off. But now we'll grab the fourth color on the second row, our green, do the next one, our blue. Oh, see there, I left a little bit of a gap, so I'm just going to go back through and select that. And then our purple, I can start from the outside again, that's always easier, and drag until I hit that line. Okay, so now we have our rainbow here. So now we're going to go to our layer menu, click on this rainbow layer and set it to clipping mask so it will clip to our text. Then we will add a new layer above this one. We're going to set our pride text layer down here. Click on that one and set it to reference. Then go back to our new layer at the very top. We are going to grab our second color on the top row and we are going to drag and drop it to fill the entire outside part of the screen. It'll fill outside of our text since it's set to a reference layer. It kind of uses that as a guide for filling and whatnot. This is going to end up being our shadow layer, but this is how we are going to get there. And then if you're obviously using the same word as me, you'll see we have these 3 other spots to fill in as well. So depending on your word, if you used a different one, you might have some other spots to fill in also. So make sure everything that's white is filled in like so. Then we'll go back to our layer menu. On this top black layer here, click on it and set it to a clipping mask also. Grab the wand icon, Gaussian Blur, and we will drag this up to 10%. Click the arrow tool and then I'm going to drag it down and to the right a little bit to create a nice shadow inside my text like this. If it's a little too dark for your liking, you can go to your layer menu. On this layer, click the N and you can to open up this menu and you can drag your opacity down a little bit. I might set mine to like 85 just to lower it just a little bit. Otherwise, I think that looks good. And now we can get started to make all of our frames for our animation. So what we're going to do is each frame, we're going to move the colors a half step over or a half a square over, and then we'll start our next color to follow it so that it keeps like moving across, you know. And then we'll blur them as we go a little bit so that the colors kind of flow together a little better and they're not so blocky. But we will do it step by step here. So these are our 3 layers. So what I am first going to do is click on each 3 layers. So slide right to select the other 2 that aren't selected right now. So they're all selected here. Click group. And this is my first group of layers that we'll be using. So the first thing that we're going to do is click on this group area here at the very top that has our drop down arrow. Just click that one so it's selected and slide left and hit duplicate. So now we have a whole new group. Our first group that's open here on the bottom, find this group, find the rainbow layer, click the wand icon, click Gaussian Blur and drag this up to 20%. You won't be able to see it since we have a new layer on top of it, a new group on top of it, but it is blurred on this layer now. If you want, you can go back to your layer menu, click the checkbox on this top group area, and then you can kind of see your bottom one and you can see them blurred together. But we're going to keep doing that as we go and we won't really be able to see it. So then once that one is blurred, save layers as we go, we will need to find the top part of our group here, this big group area, select that and click flatten. So now that whole shadow and color with the gradient is just snapped to one layer, and that will be one frame of our animation. So we'll do the same method every time. So now turn this one back on. For our new group that's open here, we will find the rainbow layer, click the arrow tool, drag it over until this right side of the selection is about halfway through this last square here, about right here. And then we will we are going to fill in this right side with color of what our next color will be, and that will be red. Since the red is going off the screen here, it'll come back on the screen here to start the rainbow over. So we will go to our color palette, grab the first color on the second row, our red, grab our selection tool, start on the outside corner here, and drag until we hit where this purple is, and let it go to fill in. Make sure there's not a gap there. Mine there is a gap, so I'm going to go back and just do it again to cover that up. So it's okay again if you overlap it a little bit. It's better to overlap it a little bit than have a big black gap there. So then the next thing we will do is go to our layer menu, and first we will make a duplicate of this group again. So make a duplicate, the one on the bottom. Again, find the rainbow layer, click the wand icon, Gaussian Blur, and slide this up to 20%. Again, you won't be able to see it with our new layer on top, but it is done now. And then click on the top part of this group here, click on it and click flatten. So now that's our next iteration of our animation done and locked. So then our new group layer, again, we will grab the rainbow layer, click the arrow tool, drag it to the left until it's about halfway, and you'll see the other colors are kind of lined up within their square. And then we already have our red selected, so we just need to grab the selection tool and cover the rest of it to fill it in. Make a duplicate of this group, the last one, select the rainbow tool, wand icon, Gaussian Blur, 20%, and then click on the top of the group and click flatten. Okay, and now we can move this next one, and so we'll just keep doing this. So again, a half a square, grab our next color, which will be orange, selection tool, cover the rest, and then go to our layers, make a duplicate of this group, last one, rainbow layer, wand tool, Gaussian Blur, 20%, and flatten. Then we'll move this one again, and then we'll fill in the rest with orange again. Since these are all now back in their regular squares, we have this last square which will all be orange. And then go ahead and make a duplicate of this group, do our Gaussian Blur on the previous rainbow layer, and flatten it. And now we'll move again, another half a square. This next color will now be yellow, so let's find that one on our color palette and fill it in, the last half square. Make a duplicate, last one, Gaussian Blur, and flatten. We'll move this one again until they're back in their squares. And then we already have the yellow selected, so we'll just fill that in. Make a duplicate, last one, Gaussian Blur, and flatten. We'll move another half square, and now our next color will be green. And we'll fill that half square in. make a duplicate, Gaussian blur on the last one, and flatten. And then we'll move again until they're back in their squares. And then we'll fill the rest in with green. And then duplicate. And last one, rainbow layer, Gaussian blur, and flatten. And then we'll move another half square, and now this next color will be blue. And then duplicate, Gaussian blur on the last one, and flatten. And then we'll move again. Fill the rest with blue. Another duplicate. Gaussian blur and flatten. New group now, and we are going to move to purple. This one actually will be our last frame. So let's move it a half square, grab the purple color on our color palette and fill in the last square, or the last half square with that color. Go to our layer menu, and this time we'll just do the Gaussian blur right now. We don't make another duplicate. We'll do the wand icon, Gaussian blur, and up to 20%, and then flatten. So essentially, the reason this is our last frame is because if we were to move it another half step, we'll have red in this full front square and purple in this full last square, which was our very first layer. We don't want another layer with that exact same pattern, because then it'll kind of double up in our animation. It'll kind of like pause there and then keep going. We want this last one to be the one that would happen right before it, which is half purple on each side, and then it'll repeat to this first one with the full red and full purple. That's why that's our last frame. So depending on if you did different colors, you just want to stop when you get like a half step away from being back to your very original pattern. So we ended up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 layers of our colors, because we had 6 colors and we did 2 frames for each, movement. So we moved them each twice, so that's why there's 12 layers. So if you had 5 colors, you should have 10 layers. If you had 7 colors, you should have 14 layers. But now we are going to do the animation part, which is super simple. Procreate has this nice animation assist feature. So under the gear icon, under canvas, we can turn off the drawing guide now first so that we don't see that anymore. And then we'll turn on animation assist. And literally all you have to do is click play. It takes every layer that you have active on your layer menu and just loops them together. So you can also, under settings, you can change the frames per second if you want. Mine automatically set to 15, but you can do faster or slower. And you can also do this ping pong shot one where it kind of goes back and forth, left to right. I like that one. One shot we don't want to do, that just plays it once and then stops it. So it's better to either do a loop or the ping pong. But go ahead and make any adjustments that you want to do there. Otherwise, that is it for our drawing today. So I hope you had fun. If you want to share your animation or drawing on Instagram, I would love to see it. So go ahead and post it and then tag me so that I can check it out. And the best way to share the animation is if you go to the gear icon and go to share, you can do an MP4. I think that one is pretty good. That's usually what I would do because that's kind of like a movie, essentially, that you can upload to Instagram. While you're there, go ahead and give me a follow so that you can see what I'm working on next. Thanks for watching.